אנחנו מוצאים את הספור עם זרה שמשון?
האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה? מה? כן.
We're going to take a look at two psukim from the Parsha. This is Sefer Devarim, Parshas Devarim, Perek Aleph, Psukim Yud Beis and Yud Gimel. Eicho esa levadi. Moshe Rabbeinu asks, or he recounts the fact that he asked, Eicho esa levadi, how can I carry alone? Tarchachem, your contentiousness, ma'umasa'achem, and your burdens, v'rivchem, and your quarrels. Havu lachem anoshim chachamim univonim. Provide for yourselves men of wisdom and understanding, viduim l'shivtechem, men who are known to the tribes, in other words, prominent men, va'asimem biroshechem, and I will place them as your head. So Moshe is recounting the fact that he had kind of marveled at the multitude. There were so many. Bnei Yisrael had become so great and so huge that he wasn't able to handle all of the issues that they brought to the table on his own. And so he appointed assistant judges and assistant leaders to help him with that situation. So those are the two psukim. And now let's look into the Zera Shimshon. Yalkut al pasuk Eicha Esa Levadi. The Yalkut Shimoni, the Medrash Yalkut Shimoni on the pasuk that we just read, how can I carry alone? Moshol lematrona. The Medrash says this is similar, or this may be compared to the case of a matron, Shahayu lo shlosha shoshvinin, who had three admirers. Echad ra osa bishalvasa. One saw her in her tranquility, in times of tranquility and good times. The echad ra osa bipochaza, and one saw her at a time of her impulsiveness, after she had behaved impulsively. The echad ra osa binivula, and one saw her in a state of disfigurement. Kach Moshe, so too Moshe, ad kan v'chule, etc. Ad kan l'shono, until here is a quote from the Yalkut Shimoni. So we need to fill in the part, at least one part of what the Zera Shimshon left out when he said v'chule, etc. And that is that the Yalkut Shimoni talks about three people, and each of them used the word eicha to describe the situation that the Klal Yisrael found itself in. Moshe here in our parsha says, Eicha esa levadi, how can I carry them on my own? And the next reference is to sefer Yeshaya, and Yeshaya says, Eicha hayisa lezona, how can it be that the faithful city, a reference to Yerushalayim, has become like a harlot? And Yirmiyah says, Eicha Yoshva Vadad. Of course, that's Sefer Eicha, the beginning of Megillas Eicha. How is it that the city that was once so full of, so populous, sits in solitude and sits quietly and forlorn? So the Yalkut Shimoni takes our pasuk about Moshe saying Eicha Esa Levadi and connects it to a pasuk where Yeshaya uses the word Eicha and Yirmiyah uses the word Eicha, and that's what that piece in the Yalkut Shimoni is talking about. Zera Shimshon continues, Hatam she'ro'a bal hamedrash, the reason that the author of the Medrash saw, lechaber lekasher elu hadeos yachad, to join together these three opinions or these three perspectives together, right? So the Zera Shimshon is saying why, he's not asking in the form of a question, but his question really is, his implied question is, why did the Yalkut Shimoni put together and combine Moshe's Eicha with Yirmiyah, with Yeshaya and Yirmiyah's use of the word Eicha? Why did the Yalkut put those three psukim together and combine them? Yesh Lomar, we can say, the Gemara, the Sanhedrin, if we look in the Gemara in Masechah Sanhedrin, Yesh kama chilukim be'inyan hadayanim. There are many differing viewpoints about the subject of judges, like the qualifications of judges. The Rabbi Acha Spirale, Rabbi Acha over there in the Gemara holds dechad kosher ladun mideoraisa, that one judge is appropriate from Torah law to judge financial matters. If you have a civil case, a case dealing with civil matters, financial matters, then Rabbi Acha says you don't need 3 judges, even though over there the Mishnah and the Gemara talk about 3 judges. You don't really need 3 judges mideoraisa from Torah law. That's his opinion. Dichsiv, and he brings a pasuk to prove his point or to support his point. B'tzedek tishpot amisecha, with righteousness you should judge your people, and it's in the singular form. Tishpot is in the singular form. So Rabbi Acha says, you see that the Torah is referring to one judge. It's using the singular form as opposed to the plural form if you had more than one judge. So one judge, according to Torah law, can handle and can take care of civil and financial type cases. V'chein pirush Rambam, and this is also what the Rambam explains in the Mishnah Torah. He brings it down lahalacha. Aval, but bipshara eino kosher. But if you're talking about a case of arbitration, if you move from a case of a judicial case and where a judge is hearing the case, and you go to a case where an arbitration is taking place and arbitrators are involved, eino kosher, one person cannot handle the arbitration himself. You must have more than one, according to Rabbi Acha. V'chein pasuk harav, and this is what the Rambam brings down in halacha. V'ayin sham b'kesef Mishnah, and look over there and the commentators on the Rambam in the commentary of the Kesef Mishnah. Shegam harif sover kain. Also, Reb Alfasi, the great and the earliest codifier, he also holds the same thing. So the Zera Shimshon, as we know he often does, is giving us building blocks. The first building block is to know that based on the Gemara and Sanhedrin, or at least one viewpoint in the Gemara and Sanhedrin, and based on the Rambam, and based on the Rif, the halacha is that a single judge can handle financial and civil cases. According to Torah law, it's only a rabbinic law or a rabbinic addition to the halacha that you need 3 judges. But from the Torah perspective, the right, so you can have 1. However, for an arbitration case, you can't have 1. You need more than 1 arbitrator. V'im kain, and if so, Moshe hayaroeh be'atzmo, Moshe saw about himself, shelo hayayochel lasos pshara. He was not able to do a pshara. He could not do arbitration. Lefi svaras harifa harambam, according to the views of the Rif and the Rambam. And as we also have seen in the Zera Shimshon's understanding of Torah Shebaal Peh is that our great and earliest leaders, their knowledge of Torah Shebaal Peh included the opinions of Torah Shebaal Peh that we can see if we look in the Shulchan Aruch, and here we're looking in the Rif and the Rambam, and certainly, of course, in the Gemara. And so Moshe Rabbeinu was aware that he could not handle arbitration cases by himself. V'gam kein hayayore milasos din, and he was also afraid of just judging cases by himself. The Isa Sham b'Sanhedrin, because the Gemara states over there in Masechah Sanhedrin, Kodem shetishma divrehem, before a judge hears the words of the litigants, O kodem shetedo lehechen hadin note, or before the judge knows in which way the law should follow. In other words, either the judge has not yet heard what the litigants have to say at all, he hasn't heard them make their cases or their claims, or maybe he's heard them talk, but he hasn't heard enough, and he hasn't heard of witnesses, he hasn't heard enough information or seen enough information to have any idea which way the verdict is going to fall out. In either of those cases, there's one more. Im tisyare penia echad chazak ve'echad rafe. Or if he becomes fearful about the fact that one of the litigants is a very strong, and here we don't just mean strong, aggressive and assertive person, and the other one is a weaker, a non-assertive person, that perhaps he will obligate the strong, aggressive litigant to pay the year dafucha, and he will chase after you, meaning the judge is fearful for his life, fearful that he might be harmed if he rules against a strong, aggressive litigant. In all of those cases, the Gemara says, Tucha lasos hapshara. You, the judge, are allowed to turn the case into an arbitration case. You can say, based on what I'm hearing or my understanding of the basic facts, we're going to switch this over to an arbitration. I'm not going to handle this case like a judge, like a dayan, where it's my ruling and my ruling is final. Rather than that, you both have to accept me as an arbitrator. If you want me to hear the case, you have to accept me as an arbitrator, and you have to agree to that, in which case they're committing themselves ahead of time to the arbitrator's decision, and a judge can do that. Oh, lehistalik min hadin. Or in these three cases, a judge can remove himself, so to speak, recuse himself from the case. He can say, I have concerns about hearing this case. I'm not comfortable hearing this case, and he can remove himself from the case. The Amar Moshe, next paragraph, Moshe, in effect, was saying to Bnei Yisrael, how can I judge you? Im osam hashlosha devarim, if the three factors or the three things, shemaskikim hadayin lasos pshara, that require a judge to change the case into an arbitration case, kulhu isnahu bachem, all three things are present among you. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to Bnei Yisrael, I can't judge you because you have the qualities that require a judge to turn the case into a pshara, an arbitration case, rather than hear and judge the case as a dayan, as a judicial case. Tar chachem. So now the Zera Shimshon is going back to the words in the pasuk. Tar chachem, your contentiousness. She'amru b'medrash, because it says in the medrash Yalkut Shimoni she'la'olam hayu omrim. All of the time, the litigants would say she'yesh lahem rayos lahavi, that they had more proofs to bring. In other words, the litigants would bring their proofs, and then the judge, Moshe Rabbeinu, would try and issue a verdict. And if the verdict didn't go like one of the verdict went against one of the litigants, then that litigant would say, no, I don't accept the verdict. I have more proof to bring and more proof to bring. Why didn't the litigant bring the proof in the beginning? Well, that's a good question. That was Moshe Rabbeinu's question. Bring all your proof so I can make a fair judgment. Don't wait till I issue a verdict and then tell me you're not accepting the verdict because you have more things, more proofs that you, more so-called proofs that you want to bring. Vidoma la'acher shetishma divreihem. It's similar to the case where a judge hears words that they say, v'iyata yodea lehechan adin noteh. And the judge says, I've heard what you have to say, but I don't know which way, I don't have enough information to rule. Shela'olam lo hayochel Moshe leido es hadin. That was Moshe's situation because he could never know the verdict, since litigants were always saying, we have more proofs to bring. Don't worry about the fact that we didn't bring them when we were supposed to bring them. We have more proofs and more proofs and more proofs, and they would never accept his verdict. So Moshe knew he couldn't serve. Moshe's point was, I can't successfully serve as a dayan, as a judge. Umasa achem, and your burdens. Moshe also said it. I can't judge you alone because of your burdens. She'amru b'medrash. It also says in the Yalkut Shimoni. Hikdim Moshe Lotzeis, if Moshe got up early to leave his tent and to come judge the people, Amru, they would say, Ma ro'a lehakdim. What did Moshe see that he's getting up early? In other words, they would make up crazy and absurd reasons. I'm not going to accept his verdict because he got up earlier than usual, which must mean there's some problem and he's up to something and there's something wrong here. And so I don't have to accept his verdict. Look at this. He got up at 6 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. Oh, me'acher lotzeis, or let's say he was late going out. Hu yoshev v'yoetz alechem ra. Then people would say, what was he doing? Why was he delayed? He was delayed because he was sitting and taking advice from people against certain litigants. And so that's another reason I don't have to accept the verdict that Moshe issues. So if Moshe couldn't win, if he got up too early and left his house for whatever reason, personal reason he had, or for whatever business he needed to attend to, then that could be used as a reason not to accept his judgment. And if he left his home late and he was delayed leaving the house, then that was a reason that people used not to accept his judgment. And also in front of us, we also know, we see that he was afraid lest the litigants would chase him around, anyone who he said was obligated in din. In other words, we see from this use of ridiculous reasonings by people, or ridiculous excuses, that they would constantly chase him around and say, no, you need to hear more, you need to come back, I'm not going to accept your verdict, And so they drove Moshe crazy, and they wouldn't accept his rulings. The Od Isabi Yalkut, it also states in the Yalkut Shimoni Umasa Achem, another explanation of the word your burdens. Melamed Shehoyu Apikorsim. This teaches that they were considered heretics, but in a very specific type of meaning to the word heretic or apikoris. Upirisham Mefaresh, the commentary explains Shehoyu Chatsufim. They were chutzpahdik. They were extremely rude. Sha'apikorsim hu hamevazet talmid chacham. One of the meanings of an apikoris is a person who embarrasses and humiliates and speaks extremely disrespectfully, or treats a talmid chacham very disrespectfully. Dehavu mechatzpei. They showed chutzpah. Umevazu es Moshe, and they tried to degrade and insult Moshe, and they did this because when the verdicts went against them, this is how they responded. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Yalkut Shimoni. So the Zera Shimshon is explaining to us that Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, wanted to judge the people, and that was his whole goal, to judge them and be able to apply the halacha, the correct law from Hashem, to each of the cases they brought before him. But he couldn't find people and litigants who would accept his verdicts, and instead they degraded him and made fun of him and drove him crazy and chased him around, and were constantly telling him that he needed to sit down and listen to more proofs and more evidence in order to issue a new verdict, as opposed to the verdict that went against one of the litigants. V'rivchem, and what does it mean, your quarrels? She'amru b'medrash, it says over there in the Yalkut Shimoni, what does it mean what did Moshe mean when he said your quarrels? She'hayu meragnin, that they were complainers and mockers. V'hu lo hayachayev ladunam, and Moshe was not obligated to judge their cases. Ve'afilu lishmoa divreihem, and even to listen to their words, because of all of the negative qualities that people showed when Moshe tried to judge them fairly and according to halacha. Because of all of those things, Moshe was not obligated to be their judge. As we saw before from the Gemara in Sanhedrin that the Zera Shimshon brought, a judge is allowed to depart from the case, to recuse himself from a case under certain circumstances. So all of these circumstances certainly would have justified Moshe to say, I can't judge you. You're not allowing me to serve as a good dayan, as a good judge. Upshara lo haya yochol lasos, and he couldn't switch the case over and say, okay, I can't judge you, but I'll serve as an arbitrator. If you accept binding arbitration, I'll do that. He couldn't do that. Mipnei shehapshara eino biyachid. Because again, as we saw before in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, arbitration can't be handled by one judge alone. Umishum hachi, and because of this, meaning because the people made it impossible for Moshe to either serve as a dayan, as a judge, or an arbitrator, then hayamochiach es Yisrael. That's why he was criticizing the people. Lomar ma e'aseh lachem, saying to them, what can I do? How can I handle you and judge you appropriately when you won't let me? You won't let me be a dayan, and you won't let me function as an arbitrator. The im tomar, and if you say that I could have Aaron serve along with me, in which case we wouldn't be hearing the case as arbitrators alone. It would be the two of us serving as arbitrators. What reason do you have to require Moshe and Aaron, these experts, to be arbitrators? You can bring anyone you choose. If you're going to, after all, if you're going to have an arbitration case, the two of you can go find people, anyone you agree upon, and use those people to be your arbitrators. You need Moshe or Aaron to be judges because you need mumchim, experts in the law. So yes, that's understandable. But if you want me to go get Aaron and you want both of us to listen to your cases as arbitrators, you don't need us. You don't need experts. You can find many other people who you can use in that role. Rather, Moshe is implying that all of their intention was, when they came to claim that they wanted to have a legal hearing, it was really an act of chutzpah. The people weren't being sincere, because if they were being sincere, then they would have accepted Moshe's verdicts and they would have behaved appropriately. No, it was all a show. It was all chutzpah. Nimtza she'ikar kavanas Moshe hayusalomar. So we find from everything that the Zera Shimshon has developed that the main point Moshe was making, the bottom line, so to speak, the fundamental point Moshe was making was Lomar, to say shehem hoyu azefonim. The people were insolent. The people were rude and insolent. Uchanira meha parsha, as is seen from Parshas Devarim, from the incidents in the episode that are recounted in Parshas Devarim. So the Zera Shimshon says that's what this all boils down to. The people were rude, the people were chutzpahdik, the people were insolent, azefonim, and that's why Moshe said, I cannot judge you appropriately and I cannot handle you by myself. Now the Zera Shimshon is going to circle back to his original unstated question, his understood question, which was, why did the Yalkut Shimoni connect Moshe's use of the word Eicha? How can I carry the people to Yirmiyahu's use of the word, to Yeshaya's use of the word and Yirmiyahu's use of the word? And he's going to explain. And now that Moshe has said that the people are insolent, Af Yeshaya Amar Shehem Azefonim, that connects him to what Yeshaya was saying, because he was also saying that the Jewish people were insolent. Be'omram, when they said Shehakadosh Baruch Hu Girsham, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by sending them into exile, by punishing them, had divorced them, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu hadn't just punished them, but he had actually ended his relationship with them. That's what the people said, which would free them to do whatever they wanted, which would free them from the mitzvos. Ve'ein lahem zeh al zeh klum, and there's no connection any longer between God and the Jewish people, chas v'shalom, but that's what the people were claiming. Kedei shelo lihios nikroim bichlal zona, in order that they could not be referred to as a zona, as a harlot or a prostitute. In other words, a married woman whose husband rebukes her or punishes her in some way, but doesn't divorce her, and now she goes to be with another man, or maybe other men, plural, she can claim, I haven't done anything wrong because my husband divorced me. I'm not a married woman anymore. And Yeshaya is saying that's exactly what the Jewish people were claiming. They were using the pretext of Hashem's punishment and saying Hashem has severed the connection with us, and so we're free to act in any way that we want to act, but it's not our fault, it's his fault. The Garcina B'Perek Beis the Meseches Ksubis, as we learn in the second parak of Meseches Ksubis, Amar Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna stated, "Ha'isha she'amra lebala gerashtani." A woman says to her husband, "You have divorced me." Ne'emonis. She is believed. A woman is believed to say to a husband, "You gave me a get and you divorced me." Even if the husband says no, she is believed. Why? Chazaka, because we have a principle or a rule, ein isha meiza paneha lifnei bala. A woman would never have the audacity to claim in front of her husband, in the presence of her husband, that he divorced her if he didn't actually divorce her. So that gives her a ne'amonus, that gives her a credibility and a believability. Vahani mili, but the Gemara goes on to say, when is this true? When do these words apply? Hecha deleka edim, when there are no witnesses deka messiah law that support her statement. Aval hecha deika edim, but where there are witnesses deka messiah law who support her statement, meaning we don't know yet. The Beis Din hasn't yet verified these witnesses, and we don't know if they're kosher, and we don't know if they're 100%. Nonetheless, the woman has in her pocket, so to speak, witnesses who are going to support her story. In a case like that, samichta laihu, she's going to rely on them, umeiza, and she will have the insolence and the audacity to claim that her husband divorced her, even if he did not actually do so. Continuing to the top of the next paragraph. V'lochein omer Yeshaya l'Knesses Yisrael, and therefore Yeshaya said to the Knesses Yisrael, to Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu omer shelo Girshei HaKadosh Baruch Hu says he did not divorce you. V'at omeres gerusha ani, and you say I am a divorced woman, because they wanted to act freely and licentiously, so they claimed that Hashem had severed the connection to them. Shenamar, as the pasuk in Yeshaya says, Eze sefer krisus imchem, where is the document of divorce of your mother? Meaning the pasuk comes right out in Yeshaya and makes the statement that Hashem is saying, why are you claiming that I severed the connection with the Jewish people? Eza sefer krisus imchem, where is the document of divorce that I gave your mother that would allow you to claim that she was a free woman and that you were free and have no longer a connection with me? And you might think at first glance that you could believe a woman who says, I am divorced, even though the husband, in this case, it's a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, denies it. You might think the woman has ne'amonos based on Rav Hamnuna's opinion in the Gemara we just saw in Ksubas, Shahare ein lecha edim, because there are no witnesses, ubizman shem edim, she'ein edim, hare at ne'amonos, ne'aman. And in a case where there are no witnesses, then the woman can be believed, the married woman can be believed to say that the husband divorced her, even though he denies it. Aval hoil shecheskosech hi lihiyos meiza. But since you have a chazaka, you have past behavior that has established you, and the you here is Klal Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael, lihiyos meiza, to be insolent, to be chutzpahdik, to be insolent. K'moshe Amar Moshe Echa Esa Levadi, as Moshe said in our parsha, Shma Mino she'enat ne'amenes de'afkan emo, you are not to be believed, because also here we can say deha'azat ponech, you showed insolence and you lied, and saying that Hashem severed the relationship, even though he didn't. Omar Yirmiyah, and there now Yirmiyah comes in, Im Kain Shehi Zona, if it's true that Klal Yisrael has acted like a harlot, Shelonis Garsha, who was not actually divorced, Vihi Nises La'acher, and she went and she married another man. So Yirmiyah is saying, what I learned from Moshe Rabbeinu in our Parsha of Devarim, and what I've learned and have seen in sefer Yeshaya about the Jewish people, when you put all that together, I see that Bnei Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael acted totally licentiously and totally inappropriately, and can be viewed like a zona, like a harlot, because Hashem did not sever the relationship, but they acted like he did, and they went around doing everything as if there were no mitzvos, no Torah, no mitzvos, chas v'shalom. Then Yirmiyahu says, Eicha yoshva vadod ha'yisa ke'almona. How is it that the city sits in solitude, ha'yisa ke'almona, and is sitting like a widow? Mipnei shetzricha lotzeis mizeh umizeh, because a woman who actually did what's described here, a married woman who claimed falsely that her husband divorced her and then went and took up with another man and married another man. In that case, she's forbidden from both her first husband and her second husband. And she's forbidden to live with either one of them or to remain with either one of them. He ke'almona, she is like a widow. Velo almona mamish, she's not actually a widow, because her husband didn't die, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, and that's the metaphor in this whole story, that he's being portrayed as the husband. He didn't die, he's still here, and he didn't sever the connection with Klal Yisrael, but the woman who acted that way is forbidden both to him and to anyone else. And that connects the three uses of the word Eicha in our Parsha by Moshe and Sefer Yeshaya and in Sefer Yirmiyahu. Yashikov to everyone who joined us this week, and we look forward to learning again next week in the Zera Shimshon's commentary on next week's Parsha.